All right, welcome back to Outmouse Labs. My name is Penny. Glad you're here, and hopefully you're coming directly over from the video that I'm posting essentially at the same time. So we're going to continue right where we left off. We are looking at our hello world code, and I am going to go grab some more code and paste it in. I'm going to show you what it does, and then I'm going to walk you through it. Okay, so as a reminder, this is what we had with our hello DragonRuby code. If we paste in the new code and hit save, it'll take a second. Now I'm using a code formatter called Rubocop, and for whatever reason it adds these weird spaces sometimes. If you save a second time, it goes away. So now we have a lot of new things. We have a timer, we have a score, and we have a block. If we click the block, our score goes up and our block moves, which is great. It doesn't move if you click somewhere else. However, we can keep going after our timer has ended, but it's definitely a start. So how did we get here? All right, starting at the top, FPS is the same. There's our def tick args, just like before. The end for it is way down here now, and there's our gdk.reset. In between, we have post, which is short for position, and we're saying that that's equal to args, which comes from here, .inputs, .mouse, .position. So that's fairly self-explanatory. It comes from inside of DragonRuby, and it is the position of your mouse cursor. Everything in green here is a comment. The compiler will ignore it, and you can create comments in Ruby with a hash, hashtag. Okay, next up we have args.state.score. So this is just a variable held in args.state. Args.state is like a box that can remember data. Since def tick is an update loop, it's a game loop, it's resetting every 60 times a second. So when you put something in state, it doesn't reset. These two pipes, and you can find the pipes usually somewhere above shift or next to enter on a standard like US style keyboard, but it will often looks like sort of two vertical dashes. You usually have to hold down shift to hit it. Two pipes means or in most programming languages, including Ruby. So we're saying set score to whatever score already is, or equal to 0. This is how we create persistent data in our game loop. So args.state.score label, exactly the same style. We have no or here, so it's going to constantly reset 60 times a second. And just from our last video, you know this is called a hash in Ruby, so or a dictionary or a table in other languages. And again, our x value on the screen, our y value on the screen is going to be equal to the height of the window minus 50. And this is something to point out. In a lot of game engines, you start in the top left and a positive y goes down. DragonRuby does it the other way. It does it like you learned in math. So it starts in the bottom left, positive x goes to the right, positive y goes up. So that's a difference from most game engines. So we're saying we want it to be from the absolute top of the screen, minus 50 is our maximum. We're saying the text, we want to be args.state.score, which we set here. So it'll start at 0, and it'll gain as we get points. Once again, our font is the same font we created earlier, which is referencing our font folder, adventure.ttf, and our size enum is 10. And if you didn't watch our last video, size enums start at 0 for the base, positive gets bigger, negative gets smaller. Okay, so next up, if args.state.timer is positive. I'm sorry, I skipped a section, my bad. Okay, next up is args.state.timer is either going to be set to whatever it already is or 10. The label for our timer is going to be a text on the screen with a hash, and its text is going to be args.state.timer.round. Round is a function that's part of Ruby, and what it does is it rounds to the nearest integer. So if it's 2.43 seconds, it's going to be 2 seconds is what you're going to see in the label. So even though it's counting properly, the user only sees whole seconds. It's just a little bit nicer looking. All right, now if args.state.timer.positive. So what this means is if our timer is a positive number, so if it's anything above 0, then we want it to minus 1 from whatever it is divided by our FPS of 60. So we want, because it's 60 frames a second, every frame we want a minus 1. So when it finally reaches every 60 frames a second will pass, and our timer will go down for what the user sees. This gives us a realistic timer that's counting properly and does adjust for the speed of the computer as well, which is really helpful. Else, we want our timer to be 0. So if it gets to a negative, well, if it gets to 0, we want it to be 0, and if it becomes a negative number, we want it to stay 0. This is a cool feature of Ruby, the question mark. It's just letting you know it's asking a question. And positive is a function in Ruby that's built in that checks to see if something is positive. So hopefully that made sense. Again, if our timer is positive, we want it to minus 1 frame per frame, and once it hits 0, we want it to stay 0. Okay, args.state.target is equal to whatever it already is, or this hash, position of 200 x, position of 200 y, width of 50, height of 50, a RGB, which is red, green, blue. 255 is all the way, 0 is none, everything in between is in between. So this is going to be a pure red square that is 50 by 50 at this location. If you look at our starter, I will save here and it'll reset. There it goes. So that is the red square being generated at that location. Okay. All right. Next up is args.outputs.solid. So outputs is to the screen or to the computer, something that the user sees. So in this case, it's outputting a solid square or solid shape to the screen, and the shape it's outputting is our target. So it's taking this data and outputting it to the screen as a solid shape. Then we're outputting our label, so we're outputting our text, and then we're outputting 2 pieces of text, our score label and our timer label, which were defined up here. So this is when the user can actually see it. And then at the end of our tick, we're telling it to run our handle click function, and that requires the position argument and the args argument. And args is set up here, position is set up here. Okay, handle click is a function I made myself. And so in Ruby, that's really easy. Def is short for define handle click. It needs a position and arguments. And this says, do nothing or return unless the user clicks the mouse. If they click the mouse, set posts or position to the point where the mouse was at when it was clicked. Then stop processing unless that post, that position, is inside the rect. Which rect? The target, which we defined up here. So this is sort of the magic. If it is inside of the rectangle, and there's our inside rect with a question mark, which is another function, and the question mark says it's asking a question. Which rect? The rect that we defined. Then we want it to keep going. Then we want the score to go up by 1, and then we want the x of the rectangle and the y of the rectangle to change, and we want them to change to a random number. So rand reproduces a number between 0 and 1, and if you put a number in the parentheses, that becomes the top number. So if you have rand 100, it'll pick a number between 0 and 100. So what we've said is pick a number between 0 and the width of our screen minus 50 pixels, and 0 and the height of our screen minus 50 pixels. We chose 50 pixels because our squares are 50 pixels, so we know it'll never be off screen or even partially off screen. And that gives us this. So we're already making really great progress. And this is, what, 52 lines of code, and that's including spaces. It's really only about 25 lines of code. It's a lot very, very quickly. Hopefully this all makes sense. Please feel free to pause, go back and check the video, and fill in your code. I will be posting some code at the end. Obviously, I'll only be posting my assets and my code, not the engine. That is something you need to purchase. But you are welcome to use my code and my assets however you'd like. I will mark them CC0, but also verbally. I'm telling you they're CC0. You are welcome to them. All right. If you do decide to use them and credit me, Outmouse Labs would be a great credit. Thank you. And if you like this content, please like and subscribe. I will be back here shortly with the next part of this series. Thanks.